No one says it's time to end the tight relationship, at this point, deeply symbiotic relationship between federal funding and research universities. Does David Berlinski say that?
Sure, I just said it. Let's end it now. But before we end it, there's a fundamental
I thought we were all supposed to believe in basic research. That's one of the
Not me. Not me. What good does it do? If some guy is maniacally determined to investigate the structure of the subatomic universe, gesundheit, let him go do that. But why should the taxpayers be billed for a $16 billion superconducting collider in Texas? It was rejected. So instead, the money went to Switzerland for the Large Hadron Collider. But this is a question that's very rarely asked. The virtue of fundamental research can be defined intrinsically. It's important to some people. But the virtue of fundamental research in a democratic society, that's not a question that can be reserved to the scientific community. That's got to be a democratic question. And it never is.
Because when the federal government provides funding, it has engaged in coercion.
Of course.
It has taken money away from citizens. Therefore, the scientists bear in a democracy a particular burden of justifying the good they are doing.
That's for sure, and the justification is inevitably, invariably, ineluctably always the same. Boy, this stuff is interesting.
It seems to me people have lost the ability to judge what is true and what is not. What is reliable, what is not reliable. What should you believe, what should you not believe? And when you have people who don't know much about science, standing in denial of it and rising to power, that is a recipe for the complete dismantling of our informed democracy.
There's a growing anti-intellectual strain in this country it may be the beginning of the end of our informed democracy. Beginning of the end of our informed democracy. Free society, you can and should think whatever you want. If you want to think the world is flat, go right ahead. But if you think the world is flat and you have influence over others, as would successful rappers or even presidential candidates, then being wrong becomes being harmful.
And so I sit back and, as a person who's interested in objective truth, and I say, well, it doesn't look like that's a path towards an objective truth. So let people continue to think and say what they want. But as a citizen of a country that is not founded on a religion, it's founded with sort of a secular construct in a way that protects whatever religion you want to express. This is protected in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't actually mention God, rather controversial in its day. And it doesn't mention God because they don't want legislation to tell you what God to worship. They knew this. They knew how governments can persecute people who had belief systems that didn't agree with the state. They knew this. So they created those freedoms. And so we have these freedoms. Go ahead. But if you're going to create legislation that has to apply to everybody, and you're now going to put your belief system into legislation, that is not a free and open democracy.
So the problem is you can't, if you start cherry picking science, that's the beginning of the end of an informed democracy. And today you have people who will just accept what anyone tells them or think that they can deny an objectively established scientific truth. And then I don't mind that if in a free country, think what you want. But if you now rise to power and have jurisdiction over legislation, and you pivot that on what you don't know about how the world works, that's a recipe for disaster. I would say it's the beginning of the unraveling of an informed democracy. Whoa. There's an emergent scientific truth. There it is. And by the way, we're in a free country, so I'm not going to hit anybody on the head.
Right.
And say you must believe this. Part of what it is to be in a free country is you can believe what you want. The problem comes about is if you believe what you want and you are responsible for the governance of the nation. I'd like to think that governance is based on objectively verifiable truths. Otherwise, what kind of culture have you created? What have you done? What is that? I don't know what that is, but it's not an informed democracy.
The great tragedies of modern society is that you have politicians cherry-picking science in the interest of social, cultural, political, religious belief systems. And that's the beginning of the end of an informed democracy, if that's how you're actually going to govern. What we need to do is, in a world of free speech and a pluralistic world, I don't have a problem with people believe whatever they want. But if your belief is not based in objective truths, you should not be creating legislation based on it. So the fact that, because people think that they just have to believe it away and then it won't be true. And that's not how the universe works. So again, if you're trained to understand how and why science works, then the two opposing factions can have a genuine political discussion about how to react to human-induced climate change. Do you have carbon credits? Do you not? That's where the politics should happen, not on the established emergent truth of the scientific research.
Astrophysicist, but you obviously trust climate science. The modeling.
It's not so much a trust, it's there are experts who perform these calculations and the models, and I am not that's not my expertise, but I know what training they go through, and I know what gets invoked when they publish a research paper, and what we need to recognize here is not whether one result gives any, where one experiment or model gives any particular answer. You want to see whether there's an emergent recurring theme among what an ensemble of researchers are putting forth. And when there is, that's the indication that you're onto something. And so I know how, when, and where to recognize when that's real. And you do so when there's the emergent truth. Here's the problem. The press will see and this happens in medicine all the time. One person publishes one research result, and then the press runs to that result and says, oh, here's a new thing, now cholesterol's good for you, all right? Or now cholesterol's bad for you. They're pivoting that on the one research paper in the New England Journal of Medicine, and they're presuming that that is the new truth. That is not the new truth.
In fact, a third of all drugs are approved on the basis of a single pivotal trial.
And so I'm saying there's got to be the emergent truth where you say, here is the new reality, is when many more than one experiment give you the same result. And so that's how and anyone should be approaching the moving frontier of science.
You don't hear me bad-mouthing Donald Trump. 60 million people voted for this guy. Right. So the issue is the 60 million fellow citizens of this country. And as an educator, I want to say, here's what science is and how and why it works and why it's powerful. And what I want to do in the dead of night is go in and sneak and take away every part of your life that's been enabled by space investments. And that would include giving you back your shitty eyesight because you had LASIK surgery that was done cheaply and accurately, enabled by algorithms that were borrowed from the laser docking mechanism of the space shuttle and the space station.
Quote, global warming, who knows? Not me for sure. But what I do know is that climate science is and has been in the hands of intellectual mediocrities and pious charlatans. Close quote.
For sure. Not everyone. My buddy Dick Winston at MIT, who's a tremendous skeptic about global warming, is not a pious charlatan. But anyone who read those emails from East Anglia.
The leaked emails.
Yeah, the leaked emails. And after you stopped chortling and really paid attention to what they're saying, their entire scientific position is, well, we've got a very weak theory. It's supported by so much gibberish in the computer record. Let's just hide that from criticism and suppress those people who don't agree with us. That is the public posture on global warming. Now, that's changed. It has changed. There's a lot more subtlety in the issue now. And even the people who are most alarmed are willing to admit, well, 15 years hasn't been much warming at all. In fact, there's been no warming. Maybe we should factor that into our self-congratulation. That's a good thing. But the real issue is that global warming is an imponderable. Global warming may be increasing to dramatic and harmful extents, but we don't know that. The science isn't clear enough.
To challenges you always lived with but never thought that they could be solved. The message is clear. If you do not understand what science is, and how and why it works, by the way, I'm not even blaming you. If you, as an educated adult, can say, this is what the scientists agree to, but I don't agree with that. If that sentence even comes out of your mouth, it's like, oh my gosh. Okay, well, we live in a free country. You can say and think what you want. I'm not even going to stop you. But if you rise to power and have influence over legislation, and that legislation references what you think science is, but it's not, that is a recipe for the unraveling of an informed democracy. And so I'm not even going to blame you. It's not your fault. I'm an educator.
Here's the thing. We live in a free country. I will never want to legislate what people think.
Mm-hmm.
You can think the craziest thoughts you want.
They do.
You should just never be responsible for creating legislation
Right.
that affect the rest of society. Legislation should be based on objective truths, not on some belief system you happen to have for yourself that others are in conflict with. So go ahead and think that, but if you try to then influence others, you're actually being irresponsible, and you are destabilizing the foundations of an informed democracy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Some of you may be wondering, why is it that we've had speakers all pretty much from a single point of view here? Over the years, for these international conferences on climate change, I have personally invited literally dozens of the most prominent spokespersons for the other side who believe that humans are causing an imminent global warming crisis to speak at our conference. I've reserved keynote spots for them. Had they accepted, we would have had at these conferences anywhere from a third to a half of the spots filled with folks with that point of view.
Hamburger.